Welcome to the new series from Performance Works International, Guest Practices. I'm Jeremy Blain, CEO of Performance Works International, and I'll be running a series of videocasts with special guests who have a story to tell from both business and life experiences. The conversations are designed to explore their journey, uncovering new ideas, innovations, and next practices that we can all learn from and be inspired by. Tanvi Gautam is not just a social media influencer of 6 years. She's not just a game changer globally, a keynote speaker, executive coach, or faculty member. She is an expert in this era of business transformation and the age of disruption. She advises leaders all over the world in terms of transforming their organization, themselves, and their people that work with them. She uses the role of narrative in facilitating this, and as a storytelling coach, supports leaders in developing those compelling messages that engage and mobilize the rest of the organization as they're faced with the execution of the transformation in hand. This week's guest practices will delve into what that actually means, how the best do it, and what the benefits are when you get it right. Hello, Tanvi. How are you? And welcome.
Wonderful. Always wonderful when I see you, Jeremy.
That me too. Well, for everybody that doesn't know you, could you just briefly introduce yourself, your business, and your passion?
Well, I'm Jeremy's friend, and that should be a good enough calling card. But apart from that, I have my own consulting and training practice, Leadership Inc. And I work with leaders across the globe to help them transition into leading in the age of disruption. So it's prime time for me, Jeremy, with everything that's going on. And I also teach at the university. I am the founder of the Global Women in Leadership program here at Singapore Management University. And I'm a mom to a teenager, which qualifies me uniquely for the world of disruption, and as any parent of teenagers will tell you.
Yeah, well, actually, there's not much you don't do by the sounds of it, isn't there? Yes, and I know what you mean about that. In fact, we're both passionate about disruption, business transformation, the so-called future of work, which doesn't really exist anymore, as we know, and we both focus that around through our research and through our operations around what leaders are really doing, because that's what seems to be driving it one way or another. So. Again, I'm really interested to hear from your point of view and your experience. What are some of the best leaders doing that others are not in this age of disruption?
Right. Wow. That's where do I even begin? I think that leaders, it's, as I like to tell people, that we've attended so many seminars on leading in the age of disruption and transformation and all of that. But now is the real opportunity, the real test of did we ever learn anything? And I like to tell my clients, the crisis is the curriculum. So, make the most of it, because the competencies you need right now are going to set you up for, many, many years into the future. I think one of the things that teams and leaders that are doing better than others right now, if you were comparatively, looking at who's making it and who's not, is that I think they're very cognizant of the fact that the way they have approached things like goal setting, the way they have approached, process management, the way they have approached laying plans for the future has all got to shift. Right. So in the past, you may have set a goal and you said, okay, I'm going to, go for it. And then you tried your best. And if you reached it, you said, hey, I'm a success. And if you didn't, you said, well, I'm a failure. Now, the trouble in the current landscape is that the goalpost is shifting continuously. Every morning we can wake up to a completely new landscape. So the leaders and teams that are doing well, they are focused on the goalpost, yes. But more importantly, they are focused on the process. And how they're doing and faring on the process bits is as important, if not more important, than having reached the goal, right? And somewhere the process is more in your control than the outcome at the moment. And that's been a very pivotal shift they've had to make, because up until now, it was all about, did you reach a goal or did you not? And suddenly you realize that it's not quite as simple as that. So I think that that has been a recalibration. The other one that I notice is, the whole people orientation conversation. I mean, you and I, if we got $1 for every time people said people are our biggest competitive advantage, we would have retired by now. But I think now is a real opportunity, and I'm seeing the leaders who are doing this, the ones who are actually looking at their teams and being a humanistic leader first, where they're actually aware that some of the people, even though they're working from home or living from work, whichever way you want to call it, are doing it under some exceptionally difficult circumstances. And they keep saying we're all in the same storm. Yeah, we are in the same storm, but we are in different boats. And the leaders that are cognizant of the fact that we are all in different boats are faring much better. They have the team supporting them more, the team stepping up more. In the business school, we refer to these kind of behaviors as citizenship behaviors, right? You're going above and beyond, because this is a time when you do need to go above and beyond. And I find that where the leaders are being inclusive in their leadership approach, where they're recognizing that the ground conditions vary dramatically between where they are sitting and where others are sitting, and they're being very responsive to the needs of the people, are the teams that are doing better.
Some massively important points in all of that, and just pick up a couple of them. That success or failure almost now being trumped by trial and error,
Yeah.
and version 1, version 2, version 3, as you're going through new processes, really is the engine of transformation, isn't it? I mean, they have to experiment a little bit more, and it's those brave and courageous leaders that are doing it. But to your point, one of the most important things is that more human-centered leadership. I'm doing a piece of research on that now. Just got some of the initial data back, and to the people, because we asked managers and the rest of the organization as well as leaders. Empathy driven leadership is their number one need right now out of the top 10. But for leaders, that's way down at number 7. So there's a real mismatch at the moment. Some leaders, as you say, those ones that are making the best progress, it's way up at the top of the list. Absolutely.
I'm very curious. What did your research say, Jeremy? What's on top for the leaders?
What's the what? Sorry.
What's on top for the leaders? If it's not empathy, if empathy is number 7, then what's number 1 for them?
Well, it depends if it's hard or soft skills, but on the top for leaders is empowerment and personality. So the top human-centered skills to engage people and customers, we need to empower our people more, which I thoroughly agree with, and our personality needs to come out more, and that's linked to communication. Whereas for the people, it was empathy, empowerment was up there as well, and relationship building as the top 3. What do you think of that?
I would say, well, I understand where they're coming from, right? My question to those leaders would be, can you truly empower your people without being empathetic first? Because if you don't have that sense of empathy, it's not just about, okay, go here, now you have greater, ambit for your decision making, etc. It's also sometimes understanding that people may not be equipped to make the decisions. People may not want to make the decisions. People may be scared to make the decisions. And that requires a level of empathy beyond, okay, I'm giving you a greater, circle of influence or whatever. So it kind of goes hand in hand, to me, at least.
Yeah, and it's so much linked to the climate that they're creating with the organization and the need to shift culture, that sort of cultural shift that everybody's going in the right direction. So much of it is mindset first, as we talked about, but then it's how people are engaged and mobilized. And I guess at the heart of what you do is really relevant to this, and leads me on to a great question for you, really, which will also be very important for this research that we're doing, is why do you think, therefore, it's important for some of these leaders not just some, all of these leaders to create new narratives, engaging stories, to facilitate that sort of positive and successful business transformation that many are striving for right now, particularly through COVID-19 and the rush to accelerate digitalization for those that haven't done it, workforce transformation, etc.
Right. So I'm just going to build on what we were talking about, right? What happens if you empower without empathy? And what if you show empathy without empowerment, right? That's the question to kind of think about. And once you get into the, I'm going to empower you, but I'm going to do it with empathy, one of the things you recognize is that to empower people to feel like they have, a locus of control, that they have some agency in what they are doing, they need to be seeing a vision of the future that actually doesn't exist. I mean, in psychology, there's a term for this, right? That we are right now what is known as liminal spaces, which means that the past has gone, the future is not here. And so we are in this in between. Nobody really knows. It's like a fog, right? When are we going to come out on the other side? And the human brain is wired for familiarity. The human brain is wired for comfort. The human brain is wired for risk assessment. So if you don't give them a new narrative, they will continue latching on to the old one. And so you can keep throwing all your empowerment strategies, all your engagement strategies, all your new normal strategies. But if the brain is still running the old script, it's kind of like if your operating system is 2.0, right? Your processor speed is not going to change, right? You get the latest generation processor, but the operating system is still old. So you've got to upgrade both. And the narrative is like the operating system. It's our understanding. Narrative is how we make sense of the world around us. And that's why leaders need to, create these new narratives and engaging storylines. Look, I'm very often quoted for this phrase, which I often repeat, which is that any enterprise, no matter how digital, will never outperform its human architecture. And the human architecture runs on sense making through narrative. Where have I come from? Where am I going? Is this uncertain? How am I going to deal with it? Right? So you have to keep that narrative piece front and center. Your employees need a new story. Your team needs a new story. Your customers need a new story. Are you giving it to them? Because in the absence of you giving it to them, they will create their own, and those will be based off the old operating system. And then you will have what is known as process lag. It'll be one step forward and two steps back. So crafting that new narrative is very, very important right now.
And it's also at the heart, really, of creating that new culture which drives it forward. But I love some of the things coming out of there, that the new normal, and I'm going to refer to a couple of things that you said. The new normal requires a new narrative, looking back rather than looking forward. And this is what I'm finding right now as well. A lot of people post-pandemic, during pandemic, saying, oh, I can't wait to go back to ... whatever that is. I'm saying, no. Start looking, what are the possibilities? You've got the opportunity. You've had this opportunity. You've started doing things differently. You've started experimentation. Why not continue with that? And narrative is the new operating system for this. I couldn't agree more. I think that's a beautiful way of putting it, because you're so right. The human architecture in terms of sense making is absolutely at the heart of narrative. So, this is not a natural. I would say that this is, you and I both have experienced this. It's not a natural trait, stroke skill, stroke behavior in some ways of leaders to be able to naturally do this, create the new narratives, bring people in, going through that journey with stories that kind of help them through that journey as they're going through. So what can those leaders, and what can many leaders really at the moment do to, if you like, unlearn the old, relearn version 2.0, 3.0, what that is, their own approach to creating these narratives that then help their organization, that mobilize them, engage them? What do they need to stop doing, start doing, continue doing?
So I think one of the first step in all of this is to uncover the existing narrative. I think that's a mistake I see leaders making all the time. They're in the rush for the new normal. They're in the rush to establish that. It's not going to happen till you have addressed the old narrative. So I was working with one of my technology clients. It's a massive name in the space of CRM and all of that, and they're positioning themselves as this purpose driven, and we are there for our clients and all that. And I was talking to their chief marketing officer, and I said, I understand how you're trying to position yourself as purpose driven and there for your people and customers and all of that. But truly be honest, when the customer or client looks at you, what's the story in their head? And the story in their head is you're too expensive, you're too clunky, you're too complex. Till you can create storylines that dislodge the old narrative, it's like throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. So the first thing you have to do is do a reality check on where is your customer, where is your employee, where is your team in terms of the old narrative in their head. And people are at different points in the journey. Some people are like, well, it is what it is, we get on with it. And others are still mourning the loss of what was, and they are still grappling with this drop in cabin pressure, so to speak. So if you're going to start creating new narratives without acknowledging the previous ones, you're not going to go anywhere. So that's step one, uncover the previous narrative. The second step is invite a conversation on what does the inclusive future look like, right? And that has got to be co-created. And leaders are not used to co-creating a vision of the future. They typically tend to create the strategy in the boardroom, they'll come and cascade it out. It doesn't work like that anymore. People have to feel collectively aligned to the future that you are putting forward to them. And so co-creating that collective vision of the future. So now you have got the existing narrative, you've created the vision of the future. The third and the final step is, what are the bridging stories you're going to create that will get the team from the existing narrative to the new narrative? And it's not as simple as, here we are, here's a new narrative, ta-da! No, it doesn't work like that. You have to help them move one step at a time, help them transition to what that new narrative is demanding of them. How are you empowering them in new ways and different ways than how it has been in the past? Tangibly and tactically and strategically, why would life look different? How would life look different? All these have got to be the bridging stories and conversations that have got to be had as you move from the past into the future. The trouble is, most people either never uncover the existing narrative, or they rush to the new one without creating these bridging stories in between. And you can't, it's another one that I tell them, it doesn't take 9 women for 1 month each to have a baby. It takes 1 woman for 9 months before she gives birth, okay? You can't fast track it. You have to carry your people with you.
Yeah, and I like the analogy of throwing spaghetti on the wall and seeing what sticks, because that is what's happening so much out there at the moment. So, and in fact, the danger of that is you start to mix narratives as well. It's like, well, this is kind of where we are and where we're going, and it's never really bridging; it's blending. And I agree with you. I think a bridge is really key from the, if you like, the old world to the brave new world. And are we brave enough to cross that river? Really, I think is the key. And
Yeah.
making the new narrative understandable, but also shareable and usable for everybody in the organization, for stakeholders externally, be they customers and partners, is a really big part of that. It does take a big shift of mentality. Are there any other companies that are doing that particularly well that you could mention?
Well, a lot of my clients are doing very well. I wouldn't say that is just thanks to me. I just think that the leaders who started working on this were actually working on this even pre-pandemic. They are the ones who are they were the first ones to get in, and they'll be the first ones to get out in this recognition of the existence of multiple storylines. So I want to refer to what you were talking about, which is very important. Even within the same organization, people can be at different points in the curve, right? Marketing can be at one point, tech can be at another point, HR can be at another point, legal can be at another point. how do you create those storylines that speak to everybody and then still bridge to, an overall narrative is really, really important. So a lot of the clients that I've been doing work with in APAC will at the, senior leadership team establish the narrative, but then they will ask the countries or the regions, whatever is their, or the verticals, whatever is the way they do business, they ask them to customize their storylines and link it with the narrative. It's not like, here's a narrative, now go create a story that links with us. It's like, what's your story and what part of it links with the narrative? So it's a top down and bottom up approach. And somewhere they end up kind of meeting in between. But you have to, you're right. It has to be customized for the stakeholders, because things that speak to one group of people may not necessarily speak to another. And that takes a little bit of nuance and skill. That takes a little bit of hand-holding and understanding what is that, translation piece that will allow everybody to feel aligned and like they're, a part of the overall piece. So, I was talking to Wouter, who was the president of GE in Asia Pacific, and he used this analogy, which, I love my analogies. Doing storytelling, I can't talk without analogies. And he talked about this idea that, if you have 100 pieces in the puzzle, you have 99 and one is missing. The puzzle's not complete. And I thought that was such a powerful analogy to help leaders understand that every piece matters. So to be able to speak to the components as well as the overall picture is a skill that leaders really need to cultivate, like yesterday, not even today, yesterday.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And if anything, that whole acceleration of what organizations, leaders, people need to become has accelerated through COVID-19, because we're into unknown territory. And the struggle of battling through that and protecting your short term, some not even getting to the long term, is a real mire to get out of. That puzzle is very much incomplete. But going back to some of those organizations that you've worked with that are being successful, what are those immediate upsides that they're getting through practicing this from a qualitative as well as a quantitative point of view? And of course, the obvious counter question to that is, what is the cost for those organizations and leaders who don't go down this road?
Yeah, so I'll address the second one because it's kind of easier. The leaders who are not doing it, the organizations that are not doing it, are coming across as stone deaf. They're completely coming across as stone deaf because they are kind of going to market and they are not coming across as people who have any sense of empathy for their customers and where they are in the journey, right? So the risk that they run is being tone deaf. The risk that they run is alienating the customer base, and most of all, the biggest risk of all is they're going to erode their brand. I think brand promises are going to be put to the test in the environment that we are in right now. So that's the risk. I think in terms of the qualitative and quantitative shifts that I have seen in my clients when they have tried to take this more nuanced approach of narrative and storytelling, is that they have found that the clients not only feel seen, heard, and understood, but are actually starting to treat these organizations not as vendors, but as partners. And that's a completely different conversation. So when one of my clients who has been using narrative and storytelling to kind of, look at where the clients are, look at, where their organization is and how can they kind of, align the narrative, qualitatively, they end up hearing from leaders in other companies where sometimes they will get asked questions which may not even be in the domain of what they are selling, but that's what happens when you cross the bridge from being a vendor to being a partner. Then you become a confidant, right? You're not just a consultant, you become a confidant. And so the biggest qualitative shift that I get reported back is that transformation from consultant to confidant, and that changes the game completely for them. In terms of the quantitative one, I think the metric that most of my clients track is in terms of were they able to close the accounts that they were hoping to close, and recognizing that especially in the big sales projects, in the sales cycle, with the long tail sales cycle, the types of stories that you're going to be telling at different points of the cycle will have to keep shifting as the client keeps moving along. And the number of, my clients who've come back and said that the big shift on the client's face when they said, I know what you're thinking, and they voiced what was the existing unspoken narrative in the head of the client, completely changed the game for them, made it that much easier to close the deal, because going back to the point of the clients felt seen, heard, and understood. And so, those are the kind of qualitative, quantitative shifts one sees when one starts looking at storytelling, whether it's within the organization or whether it's in your go-to-market initiatives. It changes the game board.
Certainly does. And I love the fact that we've gone from consultant to trusted advisor to now trusted confidant, which I like as well. So I think we've hit on something here to go a lot deeper. And it is that, isn't it? It's that deeper understanding, that deeper insight that enables you to get into the mind, not just kind of see the veneer of whoever those stakeholders are, be they internal or external customers, and start to adapt.
You're so right about that veneer piece, right? Look, what do we need in crisis? In crisis, we need leaders we can trust, which means leaders have to get in and establish credibility very fast. And nobody's going to establish credibility by saying, oh, I turned around a sales department from, $800 million to $1 billion. No, that's not a metric of trust. The metric of trust is when you can share your story that allows people to establish instant credibility and connection with you. Be that a story of your vision, be that a story of why do you care beyond your title. I think one of the things that people in general are craving right now, whether it's within the organizations or it's outside, is an authentic conversation, right? We're not looking for that slick deck. We're looking for that humanity that connects you and me. And I think that's where the narrative and storytelling piece becomes so important for establishing credibility, for establishing trust, for establishing connection. And that's how it adds value to whatever you're doing, whether it's a transformation within the organization or a transformation for your clients.
Yeah, that metric of trust internally and externally. And this whole sort of engine behind it of creating your new narrative for the new world and new possibilities, and adapting that story as the business cycle moves forward and starts to evolve. I see how that's moving forward now. So for those leaders who are listening to this, Tanvi, and say, right, you know what, I'm buying into this 100% now, but right, what do I do first? Where do they start as the kind of final piece? What are the 2-3 things that they can do to make a start and make an impact in this area?
Well, I think the place to start is by recognizing that skills that have henceforth, or in the past, I should say, have been considered as soft skills, I hate that term, right, are now the currency of the future. Those are the power skills. Those are the prime skills that will help move the needle much faster than before. And it's no longer in the realm of doable when able. This is the time and this is the space for you to start. And once you kind of, don't just pay lip service to it, but you recognize that the so-called soft skills are the power skills are the prime skills, and truly adopt that attitude, you will have to do a little bit of unlearning and start learning what is the new vocabulary, the new language, the new tools, the new skill set, of which I think storytelling, as I tell people, is one of the highest return on investment skills that you will ever learn, because not only does it help establish culture, it helps change management, it helps in selling, it helps, and I don't know how, I can't tell you how many things, because the currency of business now and in the future is trust. And storytelling gets you there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with the first point that you made about it's time to skill up in this area. It's a capability area which is not a common one for many leaders that I come across, and I know the same for you as well. I too never will call them soft skills again. These are the power skills that are needed. They're all the smart skills as well. These are the smarts that you need too, because it's helping leaders moving from just painting over the cracks with a fresh coat to actually doing a full makeover, isn't it? And essentially, that's what we're looking at. Would you agree?
I love that analogy. I'm going to steal it. Don't paint over the cracks.
Managed it great. I've learned something, you see, over the course of this conversation. Great. Excellent. Well, look, we've come to the end of our journey, and fascinating it has been, and lots to come out of it. So for those listening, if they'd like to get in touch with you, how do they reach you, Tanvi?
Well, they could reach you. You always seem to know where to find me. But apart from that, feel free to kind of connect on LinkedIn and, let me know that, you heard us over here, and, that's the fastest way. Otherwise, go to leadershiftinc.com. It's not leadership. There's no ship anymore. We have to move through the shift. So it's leadershiftinc.com. And if you really wanted to stalk me, it's Twitter. That's where I spend most time.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I know you're very active on Twitter, being a major influencer on the platform as well, wherever you are, actually, as it happens. And leadershiftinc.com. Leadershift with an F is what we're looking at there, right? Okay, so for those of you that want to get in touch, you can contact Tanvi through that. But it's been a real pleasure, Tanvi. Thanks so much for joining this week's guest practices. Really enjoyed it and really appreciated it. Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining our guest practices videocast. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel through the link below, or check out our website to access more in our current series of expert interviews.